to explore various readings of Shakespeare's Hamlet, focusing on how different interpretations have viewed Hamlet's character and, of course, his quest for revenge. We'll include perspectives from notable scholars, historical context that have shaped our understanding of Hamlet, as he is a complex and multifaceted character. And so we begin by one of the most popular interpretations, which is a Christian prince confronting evil. And you will see on the PowerPoint that you have slides of these photos, these paintings, and the one on the right is by Rubens, and it is of this Bacchus, Dionysus character, and he's holding grapes, which obviously contributes to that image, and it's one of carnal desire. And the one on the left is, of course, the charioteer and his horses, and the main metaphor goes something like, you have a logical horse that is steadfast, and you have one that is wild and unruly. And you could say, perhaps, that Hamlet is dealing with both of these, as he wants to uphold these moral values. This interpretation, of course, frames Hamlet within the context of Christian morality and ethics, something that was obviously more prevalent in Elizabeth's time, in Shakespeare's time, and something that grows rather increasingly distant as we move into a secularized society. As a prince, Hamlet is expected to hold justice and righteousness in the kingdom of Denmark. However, he faces a significant moral and ethical struggle against the pervasive corruption and deceit in the court, particularly embodied by King Claudius, who has murdered Hamlet's father to seize the throne, and obviously the betrayal from his mother, which some argued makes him lose all faith in woman or in the woman himself, where he calls himself the falsity of women. And it promotes this idea that was very popular at the time of a woman's inconstancy. Throughout the play, Hamlet grapples with his duty to avenge his father's murder while adhering to his Christian values, which of course condemn revenge and violence. A revenge hero, but problems with revenge. Hamlet is often seen as a revenge hero, a common trope in Elizabethan drama, as this is quite taboo. However, his journey is fraught with problems, reflecting the complex nature of revenge itself. Elizabethan revenge tragedies were heavily influenced by Senecan tragedy, characterized by themes of vengeance, justice, and morality. Senecan tragedy, named after the Roman philosopher and playwright Seneca, was known for its dark themes and complex characters. This influence is evident in Hamlet's own story, as he wrestles with the ethical implications of avenging his father's murder. Unlike traditional revenge heroes, who pursue vengeance without hesitation, Hamlet's path is obstructed by his deep moral and ethical concerns, which lead to his famous bouts of introspection and delay. The revival of Senecan tragedy in the Elizabethan era had a significant impact on English drama. It was all the rage, really, much like the most famous, or the most popular right now, Bridgerton, in which we see Regency-era things popping up and attracting more interest. Thomas Heywood, a contemporary of Shakespeare, was among the playwrights influenced by Seneca's works. Senecan tragedy emphasized psychological depth and moral complexity, which we see reflected in Hamlet's character. Senecan tragedies often featured protagonists who face severe moral dilemmas, intense emotions, and the consequences of their actions. Hamlet's internal struggles and soliloquies echo Seneca's focus on the inner turmoil of their characters. This influence is crucial in understanding the moral and philosophical dilemmas Hamlet faces throughout the play. For example, Seneca's focus on revenge and its moral ramifications is mirrors in Hamlet's oscillation between action and inaction, as he contemplates the justness and the consequences of revenge. Elizabethan attitude towards revenge. To fully appreciate Hamlet's character, we must consider Elizabethan attitude towards revenge and suicide. During this period, revenge was seen as a moral duty, but also, at the same time, conflicted with Christian doctrine, which condemned vengeance as a sin. Suicide, too, was heavily stigmatized and condemned by religious authorities. The tension between personal honor and religious beliefs is high. Hamlet hesitates to act on his revenge and contemplates suicide, and thus reflects his deep moral and ethical concerns. Elizabethans viewed revenge as both a necessary act of justice and a morally problematic endeavor. Similarly, the heavily religious condemnation of suicide adds another layer to Hamlet's famous to be or not to be soliloquy, where he weighs the pain of life against the fear of the unknown after death. At the same time, it is to be observed that in the soliloquy, he compares it to sleep. And sleep, I would say, is a rather more form of death, a rather cowardly form, which requires, again, inaction. Hamlet and his conscience. In his famous soliloquy, he reflects on the moral implications of his actions, which are on the screen. This passage reveals Hamlet's internal conflict as he grapples with the righteousness of his revenge. His introspection and moral qualms set him apart from the traditional revenge heroes, highlighting the depth of his ethical considerations. Hamlet's struggle is not just with external foes, but with his internal moral compass, which constantly questions the validity and consequences of revenge. This inner turmoil is a critical aspect of his character, demonstrating his profound sense of morality and justice, and ultimately leading to his inaction. G. Wilson Knight, The Embassy of Death, 1930. In his essay, The Embassy of Death, he presents a provocative interpretation of Claudius and Hamlet. Knight argues that Claudius, despite his criminal actions, is a competent and effective ruler who seeks to stabilize Denmark. Claudius's ability to govern effectively and maintain order contrasts sharply with Hamlet's actions, which Knight describes as nihilistic and death-orientated. Knight suggests that Hamlet, having communed with the dead and been instructed to never let the past be forgotten, disrupts the peace and stability of the kingdom. This interpretation positions Hamlet as a disruptor, whose obsession with vengeance and the past threatens the future of Denmark. According to Knight, Hamlet's actions are driven by a deathly influence, making him a figure of destruction rather than a restorer of justice. Another interpretation, of course, that we move on to is Mallarmé, a French symbolist poet, 1896. He offers a unique interpretation of Hamlet in his essay from 1896. He describes him as a solitary figure, a stranger, I'm not going to say that, a stranger in all the places he appears, and he walks about as if he is reading in the book of himself. This characterization highlights Hamlet's introspective nature and his existential detachment from the world around him. Mallarmé's views suggest that Hamlet is an isolated, introspective figure whose doubts and inner conflicts poison his existence. The black presence of the doubter refers to Hamlet's pervasive melancholy and skepticism, which casts a shadow over his actions and interactions. This can be most often seen with his hostility towards his mother, Gertrude, and of course, Ophelia. Mallarmé's interpretation emphasizes Hamlet's alienation and the profound impact of his introspection upon the perception of reality. Hamlet's melancholic nature is a recurring theme in scholarly interpretations. His deep sadness and philosophical contemplation are central to his character. His melancholy is of course evident in his soliloquies, where he often reflects on themes of death, existence, and the futility of life. This melancholy is not merely a personal trait, but a reflection of the larger existential questions that Hamlet grapples with. This deep-seated melancholy is a driving force between his actions and his inaction, influencing every aspect of his behaviour and decisions throughout the play. So how sympathetic are we meant to be for Hamlet? One of the central questions in interpreting Hamlet is how sympathetic are we meant to be towards him? On one hand, he's a tragic hero, deeply wronged and grappling with profound moral and existential dilemmas. His introspection and moral considerations make him a rather relatable and sympathetic character. On the other hand, his actions, particularly his treatment of other characters and the women in his play, and his impulsive violence complicate our sympathy for him. Additionally, some interpretations suggest that Hamlet is aware of his role as a character in the play, which add a layer of self-awareness and meta-theatricality to his character. And of course, this meta-theatre is also present where he puts on the play of Pyrrhus, and he intends to catch Claudius out during it. And meta-theatre was something that Shakespeare really enjoyed. His complexity and the ambiguity of his character invite us to engage with him on multiple levels, reflecting the enduring power and depth of Shakespeare's creation. Moving on to the conclusion. Hamlet's character is a rich tapestry of moral, ethical, and psychological complexities.